The silence in the emergency waiting room at St. Jude Private Medical Center was a luxury item. It was not the chaotic, buzzing silence of a public hospital where misery waited in plastic chairs. This was the silence of polished marble floors and muted conversations and high deductibles. It was a stillness that cost money. But that expensive quiet was violently shattered at 11 minutes past 10 in the evening. The automatic glass doors did not just slide open. They seemed to recoil as a man stormed through them. He was a figure cut from a magazine advertisement for power and success, but dipped in a nightmare. Gavin Thorne stood 6 feet and 2 inches tall. He wore a bespoke Italian wool suit that would cost more than most people earned in 3 months. But the charcoal gray fabric was ruined. It was spattered with dark, wet stains that bloomed across his chest and down his right sleeve. He carried a woman in his arms. She was limp. Her head lolled back against his shoulder in a way that made the receptionist gasp. Her long, dark hair cascaded down his arm like spilled ink. "I need help." Gavin did not scream the words. He did not plead. He projected them. His voice was a deep baritone that carried to every corner of the room. It was the voice of a man who was accustomed to silence falling whenever he chose to speak. It was a command. "Get a gurney, now." The triage nurse behind the desk was named Brenda. She was 50 years old and had worked in emergency medicine for 20 of them. She had seen gunshot victims and car crashes and overdoses. She stood up quickly, but her training kept her voice calm. "Sir, I need you to bring her this way." "What happened?" Gavin ignored her instruction to stop at the desk. He marched past the velvet rope barrier as if it did not exist. His eyes were wide and wild, but there was a terrifying clarity in them. He was not lost in panic. He was driving it. She fell. "My wife fell down the stairs, the marble staircase in the foyer." She slipped. He reached the double doors of the treatment area before the staff could even buzz him in. He kicked the metal plate at the bottom of the door with a polished leather Oxford shoe. The sound was like a gunshot. "Open this door. My name is Gavin Thorne. I am a donor to this hospital. And if you do not get a doctor here in 10 seconds, I will buy this building and fire every single one of you." The threat hung in the air like smoke. It was ridiculous, and yet his delivery made it sound like a promise. The doors swung open. Dr. Claire Bennett stepped out. She was 42 years old. She had short blonde hair cut in a sharp bob and eyes that were the color of steel and just as hard. She had just finished suturing a laceration on a teenager, and she had zero patience for theatrics. But she knew a critical patient when she saw one. Trauma 1. Move. Claire did not look at Gavin's face. She looked at the woman in his arms. She saw the shallow breathing. She saw the pale, clammy skin that suggested shock. She turned and walked briskly down the hall, and Gavin followed her. His footsteps were heavy and loud against the linoleum. He was breathing hard. Sweat beaded on his forehead, but he did not look at the nurses running alongside him. He looked straight ahead. His jaw was set so tight the muscles in his neck corded. "Be careful with her head." He barked the order at a young male nurse named Ryan, who reached out to help support the woman's legs. "Do not touch her like that. She is fragile." Ryan blinked but did not argue. He was 28 years old and had the kind of soft face that made children trust him immediately. He kept his hands steady as they reached the trauma room. On 3, 1, 2, 3. They transferred the woman from Gavin's arms to the sterile white sheets of the gurney. The moment his arms left her body, Gavin looked as if he had been physically struck. He hovered over the bed. His hands shook. He reached out and smoothed a stray lock of hair from her face. "Elena, baby, I am here. I am right here." Dr. Claire moved to the head of the bed. She snapped on a pair of blue nitrile gloves. The sound was sharp in the small room. "Sir, you need to step back." Gavin did not move. He gripped the metal rail of the bed with knuckles that turned white. "I am not leaving her. She gets scared. She has anxiety. She needs me. I did not ask you to leave. I asked you to step back so we can save her life. Now step back." Claire's voice was not loud, but it had the weight of authority that even Gavin could not entirely ignore. He took one single step back. It was a calculated retreat. He was still close enough to touch the patient. He was close enough to cast a shadow over her face. Assess airway, breathing, circulation. Claire called out the commands to her team. Ryan began to attach the heart monitor leads. Another nurse moved to cut the sleeve of the woman's dress to insert an IV line. "Don't cut that." Gavin's hand shot out and grabbed the nurse's wrist. The room froze. The nurse looked at Gavin in shock. "That is a vintage silk gown. It cost $4,000. Just roll up the sleeve." Dr. Claire looked up from her assessment of Elena's pupils. Her eyes narrowed. "Sir, let go of my nurse. Your wife is unconscious and her blood pressure is dropping. I do not care if she is wearing the crown jewels. We are cutting the dress." Gavin released the nurse's wrist slowly. He smoothed his tie. He looked at Claire with a gaze that was suddenly devoid of panic. It was a look of cold assessment. He was measuring her. "Do what you have to do. Just save her. She is my whole world." He turned his attention back to Elena. The change in his demeanor was whipping and disorienting. One second he was a tyrant worrying about silk, and the next he was the grieving husband. He leaned over the rail again. He ignored the boundaries of the sterile field. He brought his face inches from Elena's face. "Elena." He whispered her name. It was a sound that should have been tender. It was thick with what sounded like devotion. "I am here, baby. I caught you. I have got you." Elena was barely conscious. Her Glasgow coma scale was likely an 8 or a 9. Her eyes were closed. Her breath was coming in shallow hitches. But as Gavin's breath hit her cheek, something terrifying happened. She flinched. It was not a conscious movement. It was primal. Her shoulder jerked upward. Her head tried to turn away into the pillow. Her legs kicked out slightly beneath the sheet. It was the reaction of an animal that expects a blow. Dr. Claire saw it. She paused for a fraction of a second. She had seen thousands of patients. She had seen accident victims who reached out for their loved ones. She had seen confused elderly patients who swatted at doctors. But she had rarely seen a semi-conscious woman recoil from her husband's kiss. Ryan saw it too. He paused with the blood pressure cuff in his hand. He looked at Claire. A silent message passed between them. It was a message that carried a heavy, dark weight. "Sir," Claire spoke without looking up. She was checking the patient's neck for spinal damage. "How exactly did she fall?" Gavin straightened his spine. He ran a hand through his perfectly styled hair, which was now disheveled. "I told you." "The stairs. We were arguing. Just a silly argument about dinner plans." She was upset. She turned around too fast. She was wearing heels. "She is so clumsy. I tell her all the time to be careful." He let out a shaky breath that sounded rehearsed. "I tried to grab her. I tried to catch her. But she slipped. She tumbled all the way down. 12 steps. Marble. I heard her head hit the floor. It was the worst sound I have ever heard." He covered his face with his hands. "God, if I lose her, I will die. I will absolutely die." Claire did not comfort him. She did not offer him a chair or a glass of water. She turned to Ryan. "We need full exposure to check for other injuries. Cut the dress, all of it." Ryan nodded. He took the heavy medical shears. He did not look at Gavin. He slid the cold metal blade under the neckline of the silver silk dress. The fabric made a tearing sound as it gave way. Gavin took a half step forward as if to stop them again, but he held himself back. He watched. His eyes were not on his wife's face. They were on the scissors. He watched the blade slice through the material with an intensity that made the hair on the back of Ryan's neck stand up. Ryan cut down the center of the bodice. He peeled back the expensive ruined fabric. The room seemed to get colder. Underneath the silk, there was no pristine skin. There was a canvas of violence. A massive purple bruise bloomed across her right rib cage. It was fresh and angry, and the skin was tight with swelling. But that was not what made Dr. Claire's stomach turn. Next to the fresh purple mark, there was a yellowish-green stain on her lower stomach. It was an old bruise, a fading memory of a blow from 2 weeks ago. On her upper arm, where the sleeve had hidden it, there were 4 distinct oval marks. They were dark and small. They looked like fingerprints. They were the marks of a hand that had grabbed and squeezed with crushing force. And on her collarbone, there was a small circular scar. It was pink and puckered. It looked exactly like the burn from a cigar tip. This was not a fall down the stairs. A fall was chaotic. A fall was random bruises on knees and elbows and heads. This was specific. This was targeted. This was a history book written on a woman's body. Dr. Clare looked at the map of misery on the table. She saw the story that Elena could not tell. She saw the timeline of pain. The yellow bruise meant 2 weeks. The green meant a week. The purple was tonight. The scar was months ago. Gavin spoke from the corner of the room. His voice was lower now. It had lost its frantic edge. She bruises easily. The excuse came out smooth and practiced. She has anemia. I have taken her to specialists. You touch her, and she turns blue. It is a condition. Dr. Clare slowly pulled the sheet up to cover Elena's chest, but not before she had memorized every mark. She turned to face Gavin properly for the first time. She looked him in the eye. She saw the intelligence there. She saw the calculation. He was daring her to challenge him. He was using medical terminology. He was building his defense before she had even made an accusation. Anemia does not cause cigar burns, Mr. Thorne. The air in the room vanished. Gavin did not blink. His face did not flush. Instead, a small, cold smile touched the corner of his mouth. It was there and gone in an instant. It was a curling iron accident. She is clumsy. I told you. He took a step toward the doctor. He was tall. He used his height as a weapon. He invaded her personal space. He smelled of metallic blood and expensive sandalwood cologne. Are you a doctor or a detective? Because my wife is bleeding in her brain while you are staring at her skin. Do your job, or I will have your medical license on my desk by tomorrow morning. Ryan stepped forward. He moved his body between Gavin and Claire. It was a subtle shift, but it was a protective one. Sir, Ryan's voice was firm. You need to let the doctor work. Elena moaned on the table. It was a low sound of pure agony. Gavin's eyes snapped back to his wife. The mask of the aggressive power broker slipped back into the mask of the terrified husband. Elle, baby, I am here. He reached for her hand again. Claire saw the danger. She saw a predator in a cage with a wounded bird. She needed him out. She needed him gone. But she knew that a man like this would not leave because she asked him to. He would not leave because of rules. He would only leave if he thought it was his idea, or if he was forced by something stronger than hospital policy. She needed to buy time. She needed to get Elena to the scanner. She needed walls and locked doors between the patient and the architect of her pain. She looked at Ryan. She gave a microscopic nod. It was a signal they had developed over years of working the night shift. It meant, protect the patient. We need a CT scan of the head and abdomen immediately. Claire announced it loudly. Ryan, prepare for transport. She turned to Gavin. Her face was a blank slate. Mr. Thorne, you are right. She needs immediate imaging to check for a brain bleed. The CT scanner is in a sterile zone. The radiation protocols are strict. You cannot go in without a badge and a lead vest, which we do not have for civilians. Gavin opened his mouth to argue. If you come in, Claire cut him off. We have to stop the scan to clear you. That takes 5 minutes. Do you want to delay her brain scan for 5 minutes? She threw the choice at him like a grenade. She used his own fake concern against him. If he insisted on coming, he was admitting he cared more about control than her life. If he stayed, he lost control. Gavin ground his teeth. The muscles in his jaw jumped. He looked at the double doors of the trauma bay. He looked at Elena. He looked at the security camera in the corner of the ceiling. Fine. He spat the word out. I will wait right here, outside this door. And if you take longer than 10 minutes, I'm coming in. He leaned down one last time. He put his lips right against Elena's ear. He whispered something that neither Claire nor Ryan could hear. But they saw Elena's eyes squeeze shut tight as tears leaked out. Gavin straightened up. He adjusted his bloody suit jacket. He looked at Dr. Clare with eyes that were flat and dead. Fix her. I need her back. He turned and walked out of the room. The heavy doors swung shut behind him. The sound of the latch clicking into place was the loudest sound in the world. Ryan exhaled a breath he had been holding for 3 minutes. He looked at Claire. His hands were trembling slightly as he adjusted the IV line. Did you see those burns? He whispered. I saw them. Claire moved quickly to the head of the bed. She began to check Elena's pupil response again. Get security down here, now, and call the police. Tell them we have a domestic violence situation and the perpetrator is in the waiting room." Ryan nodded. He reached for the wall phone. "He is not going to let us keep her, Claire. Did you hear him? He knows the owner of the board." Claire looked down at the battered woman. She looked at the purple bruise that was the shape of a fist. She looked at the fear that was etched into Elena's unconscious face. "I do not care who he knows." Claire's voice was ice cold. "He is not taking her out of here. Not tonight." She placed her hand gently on Elena's uninjured shoulder. "You are safe now." She whispered it to the unconscious woman. "He is gone." But as she said it, Dr. Claire felt a chill run down her own spine. She knew men like Gavin Thorne. He was not gone. He was just waiting. And the doors of the hospital were made of glass, not steel. They were fragile, just like the woman on the table. The air in the trauma bay was not just sterile, it was pressurized. Gavin Thorne had returned to the doorway the moment the door latch clicked open for a nurse bringing in saline bags. He did not step fully inside, but he leaned his large frame against the door jamb. He created a physical barricade that blocked the exit and dominated the view. His eyes were not looking at the monitors or the IV drips. They were fixed on Elena's face with the intensity of a sniper waiting for a target to move. "She has separation anxiety." Gavin announced this to the room as if he were reading a medical diagnosis from a chart. "If she wakes up and I am not the first thing she sees, she will panic. Her heart rate will spike. You do not want that. I am her anchor." Dr. Claire Bennett did not look up from the chart she was scribbling on. She knew exactly what he was doing. It was a classic abuser tactic. He was framing his control as care. He was planting the narrative that Elena was mentally unstable and dependent. If Elena woke up screaming, it would not be because she was terrified of him. It would be because of her condition. It was brilliant and sick. "Mr. Thorne, please step back behind the red line." Claire pointed to the tape on the floor with her pen. Gavin did not move his feet. He shifted his weight forward. "I am fine right here." "Right? I am watching you. I want to make sure you do not miss anything. You missed the anemia. Who knows what else you might miss?" Elena stirred on the bed. Her eyelids fluttered. The sedative was fighting a war against her adrenaline, but the pain was waking her up. She let out a small whimper. "See?" Gavin took a step into the room. "She hears my voice. She needs me." Claire's eyes met Ryan's over the patient's body. The look was sharp and urgent. They could not do a proper assessment with him breathing down their necks. They could not ask the questions that needed to be asked. Is there a weapon in the house? Are there children? Do you have a safe place to go? Every time Gavin spoke, he was tightening the invisible leash around Elena's neck. Ryan understood the signal. He turned to the portable CT scanner that was positioned in the corner of the room. It was a large beige machine on wheels meant for rapid assessments. He pressed the power button and then surreptitiously keyed in a maintenance sequence that forced the screen to flash red. Damn it. Ryan swore loudly enough to startle the other nurse. He hit the side of the machine with the palm of his hand. "Dr. Claire, the portable unit is throwing an error code. It is the battery calibration again. It is dead." Claire acted her part instantly. She threw her clipboard onto the counter with a clatter of frustration. "Unbelievable! This is a private hospital. We charge $3,000 a night and we cannot get working equipment." She turned to Gavin. Her face was flushed with fake irritation. "Mr. Thorne, I apologize. Our portable scanner is down. We cannot scan her brain here. We have to move her to the main radiology suite in the East Wing." Gavin narrowed his eyes. He looked from the machine to Ryan and back to Claire. He was analyzing the situation for traps. "Fine. Let us go. I will walk with the gurney." Claire shook her head firmly. "You cannot. The main radiology suite is a sterility level 4 zone right now because we have a patient with a compromised immune system in the next bay. It is a clean corridor, no street clothes, no civilians, absolutely no exceptions. This was a lie. There was no level 4 zone. There was no immune compromised patient. But Claire delivered the lie with the confident arrogance of a surgeon who expected her word to be law. Gavin's face darkened. The charm evaporated completely. You are telling me I cannot be with my wife while she is bleeding in her brain. I am telling you that if you walk into that corridor, you will contaminate a sterile field, and I will have you arrested for endangering public health. Claire stepped closer to him. She pitched her voice low and hard. Do you want to explain to the press why you killed a leukemia patient just because you wanted to hold your wife's hand? Or do you want us to save Elena? Choose now. It was the mention of the press that did it. Gavin Thorne lived and died by his public image. He was the golden boy of Atlanta real estate. He could not be seen as a villain who endangered cancer patients. He clenched his jaw so hard a muscle popped in his cheek. He looked at Elena one last time. It was a look of possession. He was visually marking her. Take her. He stepped back. But I am calling my lawyer, and I am calling the hospital administrator. If I find out you are playing games with me, Dr. Bennett, I will burn this place to the ground. Ryan unlocked the wheels of the gurney. Let us move, now. They rolled Elena out of the trauma bay. They moved fast. The wheels squeaked on the polished floor. Gavin walked alongside them for 10 feet until they reached the double doors marked Restricted Access. He stopped at the threshold. He stood there in his bloody $2,000 suit. He looked like a king who had been denied entry to his own castle. I will be right here, he called out as the doors swung shut. Right here. The doors clicked. The magnetic lock engaged with a solid thud. The silence in the corridor was sudden and profound. Ryan did not slow down. He pushed the gurney past the radiology waiting area and deep into the interior of the hospital. They turned a corner and then another. They were putting distance between the predator and his prey. They wheeled Elena into scanning room 3. It was a small room with thick, lead-lined walls designed to block radiation. It was also soundproof. Ryan closed the heavy door and locked it. Only then did he stop moving. He looked down at Elena. She was fully awake now. Her eyes were wide and dark. They darted around the room, scanning the corners. She was looking for him. She was looking for Gavin. He is not here. Ryan spoke softly. He kept his hands in plain sight. He did not want to make any sudden movements. We locked the doors. He cannot come in. You are safe. Elena did not speak. She stared at the ceiling. Her chest was rising and falling in short, terrified gasps. Her hands were gripping the sheets so tightly, her fingernails were digging into her palms. Ryan pulled up a stool. He sat down so he was below her eye level. He wanted to give her the power. He wanted to be small. Elena. He used her name. Not Mrs. Thorne, not Sweetie, not Honey. My name is Ryan. I am your nurse. Dr. Claire is outside guarding the hall. He reached out and took a warm, wet cloth. He gently began to wipe the dried blood from her forehead. He was careful not to touch the bruises. I need you to listen to me. We saw the marks. Elena stopped breathing for a second. Her eyes snapped to his face. We saw the burns on your arm. We saw the old break in your jaw. We know this was not a fall. Ryan's voice was steady. It was a lifeline thrown into a storm. You do not have to say anything. I know you are scared. I know he is powerful. But right now in this room, he is nothing. He is just a man outside a door. He paused. He waited for her to blink. He waited for a sign that she was hearing him. Does it hurt? He asked the question simply. He was not just asking about the broken ribs or the concussion. He was asking about the life she was living. He was asking about the terror that lived in her marrow. Elena's lips parted. They were dry and cracked. She tried to form a word. A sound bubbled in her throat, but it died there. The conditioning was too strong. Gavin's voice was in her head, telling her to be quiet, telling her that nobody would believe her, telling her that she was crazy. She looked at Ryan. She saw the kindness in his brown eyes. It was a foreign language to her. She did not nod. She did not shake her head. Instead, a single tear pooled in the corner of her right eye. It slid over the bridge of her nose and tracked a hot line down her temple into her hair. It was the loudest answer Ryan had ever heard. Okay, Ryan whispered. Okay, we are going to get you out. Meanwhile, in the main waiting area, the atmosphere was becoming radioactive. Gavin Thorne paced back and forth. He checked his gold Rolex watch every 30 seconds. 11 minutes had passed. They had said 10. He pulled his smartphone from his pocket. He dialed a number. "Arthur, it is Gavin." He spoke into the phone while staring at the restricted doors. "I am at St. Jude. They are keeping me from Elena. They are stalling. I want you to get a court order. I want you to call the chief of medicine. I want you to threaten them with a lawsuit that will make their grandchildren poor." He listened for a moment. "I do not care what time it is. Wake the judge up. Elena is vulnerable. She is confused. If she talks to them, she might say things that are not true. She hallucinates, Arthur. You know that. We have to protect her from herself." He hung up the phone with a violent stab of his finger. 12 minutes. His patience snapped. It was a physical sensation, like a cable parting under tension. He felt the rage boil up from his gut. It was the same rage that had made him push Elena down the stairs 2 hours ago. It was the rage of a man who was losing control of his property. He walked up to the double doors. He saw the card reader. He saw the sign that said, "Authorized personnel only." He did not care. He slammed his hand against the door. "Open this door!" he yelled. "Dr. Bennett, I am giving you 3 seconds." There was no answer. The silence from the other side was mocking him. Gavin took a step back and then threw his shoulder against the door. The metal rattled, but the magnetic lock held firm. "Sir, you need to step away from the door." The voice came from behind him. It was deep and gravelly. Gavin spun around. 2 security guards stood there. One was tall and thin. The other was built like a vending machine with a neck as thick as a tree trunk. His name tag read Samson. Gavin straightened his jacket. He laughed. It was a short, sharp sound. "Do you know who I am?" "Sir, this is a hospital. You are disturbing the patients." Samson stepped forward. He put a hand on his utility belt. "I am asking you nicely. Go sit down. You are asking me." Gavin stepped into Samson's face. He poked a finger into the guard's chest. "I built this wing. My name is on the plaque in the lobby. I pay your salary. Now get out of my way before I have you fired and blacklisted from every security job in the state. I am going in there to get my wife." Gavin turned back to the door. He raised his foot to kick the glass panel. He was going to break it. He was going to drag Elena out. He was going to take her home and punish her for this humiliation. Freeze. The command did not come from the security guard. It came from the main entrance of the ER. Gavin froze. He turned his head slowly. 3 police officers were walking toward him. They were not walking casually. They had their hands resting on their holsters. In the lead was a female officer with graying hair and eyes that had seen everything. Behind her were 2 younger officers who looked ready for a fight. Gavin Thorne. The female officer spoke. Gavin dropped his foot. He composed his face. He put on the mask of the concerned citizen. "Officers, thank God. These people are holding my wife hostage. I need you to—" "Mr. Thorne, put your hands behind your back." The officer interrupted him. She pulled a pair of handcuffs from her belt. The metal glinted under the fluorescent lights. "Excuse me." Gavin blinked. The script was going wrong. "We have a statement from a witness regarding a domestic disturbance at your residence at 10 o'clock tonight, and we have probable cause based on the victim's visible injuries. You are under arrest for aggravated assault. A witness." Gavin's mind raced. The neighbors. The damn nosy neighbors in the villa next door. He had been too loud. He looked at the handcuffs. He looked at the security guards who were now smirking. He looked at the nurses watching from the triage station. He realized he had lost the battle. But the war was just starting. He slowly turned around. He offered his wrists. He did not fight. He did not scream. He went cold. "You are making a mistake. A very expensive mistake." The officer clicked the cuffs onto his wrists. She recited his rights. "You have the right to remain silent." Gavin did not remain silent. As they led him past the double doors where Elena was hidden, he stopped. He looked at the blank wood of the door. He imagined her on the other side. He imagined her thinking she was safe. He smiled. It was a smile that did not show his teeth. It was a smile of pure malice. "Enjoy your night, Elena." He spoke to the door. His voice was soft, but it carried perfectly in the quiet hallway. I will be out by breakfast, and you will regret this. You will regret everything." The officer shoved him forward. The automatic doors whooshed open and the humid night air hit him. Gavin Thorne walked into the back of the police cruiser with his head held high. He was already planning his next move. He was an architect, and he was going to dismantle Elena's life brick by brick. Inside the sterile room, Ryan watched the monitor. Elena's heart rate had just spiked to 140 beats per minute. She had heard him. The morning light in the hospital room was not gentle. It was aggressive. It sliced through the gaps in the vertical blinds and hit Elena's face like a physical blow. She blinked. Her eyelids felt like they were made of sandpaper. For 3 seconds, she did not know where she was. She saw a beige ceiling tile with a water stain that looked like a map of Texas. She heard the rhythmic beeping of a machine. She smelled antiseptic and lemon floor wax. Then she moved her left arm, and the pain screamed at her. It was a sharp, hot agony that radiated from her shoulder down to her wrist. The memory of the night before crashed into her mind. The stairs, the taste of blood, the look in Gavin's eyes, which was void of humanity. But as she lay there in the sterile safety of St. Jude Medical Center, her mind did not stay on the stairs. It drifted back. It went back 2 years. It went back to the first time. It was the winter gala at the High Museum of Art. Elena remembered the dress. It was emerald green velvet and backless. She had felt beautiful. Gavin had looked like a movie star in his tuxedo. They were the golden couple of Atlanta. She was standing near the bar holding a glass of champagne. She was talking to Marcus, who was a junior architect at Gavin's firm. Marcus had made a joke about a client who wanted a gold-plated toilet. Elena had laughed. It was a simple laugh. It was innocent. It was the sound of a woman enjoying a party. She had touched Marcus's arm lightly. A gesture of camaraderie. Nothing more. She did not see Gavin approaching. She only felt him. He appeared at her elbow, and his hand clamped onto her upper arm. His fingers dug into the soft flesh so hard she almost dropped her glass. "Time to go, Elena." His voice was low and smooth, but his eyes were flat. They drove home in silence. The silence in the Mercedes was heavier than lead. Elena tried to ask what was wrong, but he turned up the radio. Classical music, Vivaldi. The cheerful strings mocked the tension in the car. When they got inside their foyer, he did not scream. He did not yell. He simply turned and backhanded her across the face. The force of the blow knocked her into the hallway table. A crystal vase shattered. Water and roses spilled across the hardwood floor. Elena lay there stunned. Her cheek throbbed with a heat she had never known. She looked up at him. She expected to see a monster. Instead, she saw him crying. Gavin fell to his knees in the wet rose petals. He grabbed her hands. He sobbed like a child who had scraped his knee. Oh, God, Elena, look what you made me do." He kissed her swelling cheek. His tears mixed with the water on the floor. "I love you so much it makes me crazy. When I saw you touching him, I lost my mind. I cannot lose you. You are mine. You are the only good thing I have. Please forgive me. Please." She had forgiven him. She had believed him. She had thought his violence was a symptom of his overwhelming passion. She did not know then that the tears were a weapon just as dangerous as his fists. The memory faded as the hospital door opened. Elena flinched. Her heart hammered against her bruised ribs, but it was not Gavin. A woman walked in. She was short and sturdy, with hair pulled back in a no-nonsense bun. She wore a blazer that had seen better days and carried a leather satchel that looked heavy. "Good morning, Elena. My name is Sarah. I am a crisis intervention specialist." Sarah did not smile. She did not use the pitying voice that Elena hated. She pulled a chair close to the bed and sat down. "We have a lot to do and not much time." Elena pushed herself up to a sitting position. The room spun for a moment. "Is he here? Is Gavin here? He is out on bail." Sarah dropped the news like a stone. "He posted bond an hour ago. $50,000. He is a free man for now, but the restraining order is active. If he comes within 500 feet of you, he goes back to jail." Elena let out a bitter laugh. It hurt her chest. "He does not care about rules. He thinks rules are for poor people." "I know." Sarah opened her satchel and pulled out a notepad. That is why you cannot go home. The police officer told me you agreed to press charges. That is brave, but it also makes you a target. The most dangerous time for a woman is when she finally leaves." Elena nodded. The fog in her brain was clearing. Survival instinct was taking over. "I am not going home. I am going to a hotel. The Four Seasons. I need to be somewhere with security. I just need to get my phone and call a car." She looked around the bedside table. "Where is my phone?" Sarah hesitated. For the first time, her professional mask slipped. "Your phone is here, but it is a brick." She handed Elena the sleek smartphone. Elena pressed the side button. The screen lit up. But in the top corner where the signal bars should be, there was a message. "No service." He cut the line. Elena whispered. She tapped the screen frantically. She tried to connect to the hospital Wi-Fi. It connected. But when she opened her banking app to check her balance, a notification popped up. "Account frozen. Contact bank administrator." Elena felt a cold sweat break out on the back of her neck. She opened her credit card app. Card declined, reported lost or stolen. She opened her email. Her password was incorrect. She tried again. Incorrect. "He has locked me out." Elena looked at Sarah. Her hands were shaking. Everything. The joint accounts, my personal savings, my credit cards, even my email. Sarah nodded grimly. "It is financial abuse, Elena. It is standard operating procedure for men like him. He wants you to feel helpless. He wants you to realize that you cannot buy a sandwich, let alone a hotel room at the Four Seasons. He wants you to crawl back because you are hungry and homeless." Elena stared at the phone. She was 32 years old. She was an award-winning interior designer. Her name was on the deed of a $3 million house. And yet in this moment, she had less agency than a teenager. She had $0. She had no way to communicate. She was naked in a world that required money to survive. "I have my jewelry." Elena touched her ear. Her diamond studs were gone. Ryan must have taken them off for the scan. "They're in the hospital safe." Sarah said gently, "But you cannot pawn diamonds on a Sunday morning, and you need to be out of here in an hour. This hospital is a public place." "He knows you are here. I have my sister." Elena said the words with a sudden surge of hope. "Mia. She lives in Savannah, but she will come. She will help me." Sarah handed her the bedside landline phone. "Make the call, but be prepared. Gavin is an architect, Elena. He builds structures, but he also knows how to demolish them. He has likely been planning this demolition for a long time." Elena picked up the plastic receiver. Her fingers trembled as she dialed Mia's number. She knew it by heart. The phone rang 3 times. "Hello?" Mia's voice sounded tight, strained. "Mia, it is me." Elena choked on the words. Tears pricked her eyes. "I am in the hospital. He hurt me, Mia. He really hurt me this time. I left him. I need help. I have no money. He locked everything. Can you transfer me some cash? Or come get me, please?" There was a silence on the other end of the line. It was a terrible, thick silence. "Elena." Mia's voice cracked. She was crying. "I can't." "What do you mean you can't?" Elena gripped the phone tighter. "Mia, I am scared. I have nowhere to go. I know, and I am so sorry, but you do not understand." Mia took a ragged breath. "I got an email from Gavin's lawyer this morning at 6 o'clock. He attached a lawsuit. He is suing David's construction company." David was Mia's husband. His small construction firm was their entire livelihood. He is claiming breach of contract on that project they worked on 3 years ago. He is suing for $2 million, Elena. $2 million. He said he will bury us in litigation for 10 years. He said he will bankrupt us and take our house. Elena felt the room tilting. "He is doing this because of me." Mia sobbed openly now. The email had a postscript. It said that if we aid or abet his mentally unstable wife in any way, he will consider it interference in a medical guardianship, and he will add criminal charges to the lawsuit. He said, "You are sick, Elena." He said you need professional help, and if we give you money, we are enabling your addiction. Addiction. Elena whispered the word. It was a lie so bold it was breathtaking. She barely drank wine. She never took pills. But Gavin was painting a picture. He was creating a narrative where he was the savior and she was the junkie. Mia, you know that is not true. I believe you. Of course I believe you, Mia cried. But David is freaking out. We have the kids, Elena. We cannot lose everything. We cannot fight Gavin Thorne. He has an army of lawyers. So you are leaving me here. Elena's voice was hollow. She felt a coldness spreading through her chest that was far worse than the pain in her ribs. This was the coldness of total abandonment. I can't send money. He will see the transfer. He is watching everything. Mia's voice dropped to a whisper. Please forgive me. Just go back to him, Elena. Just for a little while, until he calms down. Maybe it is not safe to leave right now. Maybe you should just apologize. Elena pulled the phone away from her ear. She stared at it. She could hear her sister crying, tinny and small, from the receiver. Just apologize. That was the advice. Go back to the monster. Say you are sorry for bleeding on his floor. Save the family business. Elena slowly placed the receiver back on the cradle. The click ended the connection. It ended more than the call. It ended the illusion that she had a safety net. She looked at Sarah. Sarah did not say, I told you so. She sat with her hands folded on her lap. Her face was grim. He got to her, Elena said. Her voice was flat. He threatened her husband's company. She cannot help me. Sarah nodded. He is cutting off your limbs, Elena. He wants you to be a torso. Immobile, helpless. Sarah stood up. She zipped her satchel. So now you have a choice. You can go back to the Four Seasons, which you cannot pay for, and wait for him to come pick you up like a lost package. Or you can trust me. Elena looked at the woman. She looked at the worn blazer and the tired eyes. What is the option? A shelter. Elena recoiled. The word tasted like ash. Shelters were for other people. Shelters were for women who did not have master's degrees and vacation homes in Aspen. I am not going to a homeless shelter. It is not a homeless shelter. It is a domestic violence safe house. It is hidden. It is secure. It has high walls and cameras and armed guards. Sarah leaned forward. It is not the Four Seasons. You will share a bathroom. You will sleep on a twin mattress. You will have chores, but you will be alive. Sarah checked her watch. Gavin is smart. He knows you have no money. He knows you called your sister. He knows the rejection will break you. He expects you to call him within the hour, begging for a ride. Sarah walked to the window and closed the blinds tight, shutting out the sun. Disappoint him. Elena looked at her hands. They were bare. No rings, no phone, no money. She was stripped down to nothing but her skin and her bones. She thought of the emerald dress. She thought of the roses on the floor. She thought of Mia's terrified voice. If she went back, she would never leave again. Next time, he would not just break her ribs. He would break her mind. Elena swung her legs over the side of the bed. The pain flared up again, but she welcomed it. It was fuel. Do you have clothes for me? She asked. Sarah smiled. It was a small, fierce smile. I have a bag in the car, jeans and a hoodie. You will look like nobody. And right now, nobody is the safest person to be. Let's go. Elena stood up. She wobbled, but she did not fall. She was penniless. She was isolated. She was hunted. But she was leaving. The place did not have a name on the door. It did not have a sign. It was a nondescript brick building in a neighborhood where the streetlights flickered and the grass grew through cracks in the sidewalk. From the outside, it looked like an abandoned warehouse or a failing community center. There was nothing to suggest that inside 20 women and children were hiding for their lives. Sarah parked the car around the back in an alleyway that smelled of wet cardboard and exhaust. Welcome to the sanctuary. Sarah said the word with a grim reverence. Elena stepped out of the car. She pulled the hood of her gray sweatshirt up. It was a reflex now. She was hiding her face. She was hiding the bruising that had turned a violent shade of greenish yellow. But mostly she was hiding the shame. 3 days ago she had been the hostess of a charity gala. Now she was a refugee in her own city. They went through 3 heavy steel doors. Each one required a key card and a code. The sound of the locks engaging behind them was heavy and final. Clack, clack, clack. The interior did not smell like the Four Seasons. It smelled of bleach and cafeteria food and cheap laundry detergent. It smelled of too many people living in too little space. Sarah led her down a long hallway, painted a calming but institutional shade of pale blue. "You are in room 4B. Sarah handed her a thin pillow and a stack of sheets that felt like sandpaper. "We have rules here, Elena. Strict rules. No cell phones, no internet access except on the monitored computer in the office. You do not tell anyone the address. You do not order pizza. You do not look out the windows without the blinds drawn." Elena nodded. She felt like a child being sent to boarding school. "And you have a roommate. Her name is Chloe. She has been here for 6 months. Give her space." Sarah opened the door to room 4B. It was a closet. That was Elena's first thought. It was a room designed for one person but forced to hold two. There was a metal bunk bed pushed against the wall, a small sink in the corner, a single dresser with peeling laminate. On the bottom bunk, a girl was sitting cross-legged. She looked to be about 16 or 17. She had chopped black hair that stuck out in jagged angles. She wore a black t-shirt that was 3 sizes too big. But it was her arms that caught Elena's attention. They were covered in scars. Some were straight, thin lines like razor cuts. Others were jagged and white. They were the map of a different kind of war. The girl looked up. Her eyes were dark and flat. There was no curiosity in them, only a defensive wall of boredom. "Hi," Elena whispered. She clutched her stack of sheets to her chest. "I am Elena." The girl stared at her for 5 long seconds. She looked at Elena's expensive manicure, which was chipped. She looked at the bruises on Elena's face. She looked at the high-quality leather boots that Elena was still wearing because they were the only shoes she had. "Top bunk is yours," the girl said. Her voice was raspy, like she had been screaming or smoking for years. "Do not touch my stuff. If you snore, I will smother you with a pillow. I am Chloe." Chloe went back to picking at a loose thread on her jeans. The welcome was over. Elena climbed the metal ladder. It creaked under her weight. She made the bed with the scratchy sheets. Her ribs screamed in protest as she stretched to tuck in the corners. When she was done, she lay down and stared at the ceiling. She was Mrs. Gavin Thorne. She was a woman who ordered Egyptian cotton sheets and drank $60 wine. Now she was Elena from room 4B. For the next 48 hours, time seemed to dissolve into a gray sludge. Life in the shelter was a regimented existence. Wake up at 7, breakfast at 8, chores at 9, group therapy at 10. Elena scrubbed toilets. She wiped down tables. She chopped onions for a stew that tasted like nothing. She moved through the motions like a ghost. The other women watched her. They saw the way she held her knife. They saw the way she walked with a straight spine even when she was exhausted. They knew she did not belong here. They whispered when she walked by, "That is the rich lady, the one from the news. Her husband is the architect." Elena ignored them. She stayed in her room or in the corner of the common area. She watched Chloe. Chloe was a ghost too, but a different kind. Chloe was angry. She moved through the shelter like a live wire. She snapped at the staff. She hoarded food in her pockets. But at night, Elena heard her. She heard the soft, muffled sounds coming from the bottom bunk. They were the sounds of a child crying into a pillow, trying desperately to be silent. On the second night, Elena leaned over the side of the bunk. "Chloe," she whispered. "Go to sleep, princess," Chloe hissed back. "I can hear you." "So what? Mind your business. I just wanted to say that I am sorry for whatever happened to you." Chloe went silent. Then a minute later, her voice floated up from the dark. "Nobody is sorry. They are just glad it is not them." The bond was fragile and thin, but it was there. 2 wounded animals acknowledging each other in the dark. Then came the afternoon of the 3rd day. It was a Tuesday. It was raining. The mood in the shelter was low. The dampness seemed to seep into the walls, making the air heavy. Elena was in the kitchen drying dishes. Sarah was in the front office handling intake paperwork for a new arrival. Suddenly the buzzer at the delivery bay rang. It was a harsh, jarring sound. Deliveries were only scheduled for Mondays and Thursdays. Sarah walked to the intercom. Yes. Delivery for Elena. The voice on the intercom was tinny and confused. We have an Elena here, right? I have a package. Priority rush. Sarah went pale. She pressed the talk button. You have the wrong address. There is no Elena here. Please leave. I have a signature requirement, ma'am. The guy paid extra. Said it was life or death. He gave me this address. Is this the community center? Sarah looked at Elena, who had frozen in the kitchen doorway. The dish towel dropped from Elena's hand. Do not open it, Elena whispered. Sarah turned to the security guard, a large man named David. Check it out. Do not open the door fully. Just see what it is. David nodded. He walked to the heavy steel door. He unlocked the 3 deadbolts. He cracked the door open 2 inches. Outside stood a delivery boy. He was soaking wet. He held a massive arrangement of flowers. They were white lilies. Dozens of them. They were beautiful and funereal. They were the kind of flowers you sent to a wake. David took the flowers. He signed the pad. He locked the door again. He carried the arrangement into the hallway. The smell of the lilies was overpowering. It was sweet and cloying. It masked the smell of bleach. There is a card, David said. He handed the small envelope to Sarah. Sarah's hands shook as she opened it. She read the note. Her face drained of all color. She looked up at Elena. It is for you. Elena walked forward. Her legs felt like they were moving through water. She took the card. The handwriting was familiar. It was the elegant architectural script she had seen on blueprints for 10 years. It was sharp and precise. I know where you are. You cannot hide from me, Elena. The dampness is bad for your chest. Come home before it is too late. Love, Gavin. Elena dropped the card. He knows about the dampness, she whispered. He knows it is raining. He knows this building is old. He knows everything. Panic exploded in the room. It started with a gasp from one of the other women. Then it spread like a contagion. He found us. A woman named Maria grabbed her 2 children. If he found her, he found all of us. This place is compromised. He could be outside right now. The energy in the hallway shifted from dull depression to sharp terror. Women began to run to their rooms. They started packing bags. They were grabbing diapers and teddy bears. Sarah tried to shout over the noise. Everyone stay calm. The doors are locked. We have security. He is rich. Chloe shouted from the doorway of the kitchen. She was standing there with a look of pure disgust. Locks do not stop rich men. He probably bought the delivery company. He probably paid someone to follow the van. Chloe looked at Elena. You brought him here. You brought the wolf to the door. Elena stood in the center of the hallway. The smell of the lilies was making her nauseous. She looked at the panicked women. She saw a mother crying as she tried to put a coat on a toddler. She saw the fear in Sarah's eyes. She had done this. Gavin had not just attacked her. He had attacked this sanctuary. He had reached out his long hand and crushed the only safety these women had. And he had done it with flowers. He had used beauty to deliver a threat. It was his signature. It was psychological terrorism. Elena looked at the white petals. They were perfect, pristine. Something inside her snapped. It was not fear. Fear was cold. This was hot. It started in her stomach and rose up her throat like bile. It was rage. It was a pure, white-hot fury. She grabbed the heavy glass vase. The water sloshed over her hands. She lifted it over her head. Elena, no! Sarah yelled. Elena threw the vase. She threw it with all the strength she had left. She threw it at the wall. The sound of the glass shattering was magnificent. It was an explosion. Shards of glass flew everywhere. The water splashed across the linoleum. The white lilies lay decapitated and broken in the puddle. The hallway went silent. Everyone looked at Elena. She was breathing hard. Her chest heaved. Her hands were clenched into fists. He wants us to run, Elena spoke. Her voice was not a whisper anymore. It was low and dangerous. He sent these to make us run, to make us scatter like rats so he can pick us off one by one. She looked at Chloe. She looked at Maria. She looked at Sarah. He thinks I am scared. He thinks I am going to pack my bag and crawl back to him because nowhere is safe. She walked over to the mess on the floor. She stepped on a lily, crushing the white petals into the dirty floor with her boot. "I am not running." She looked up. Her eyes were dry. They were hard. "Burn the card. Clean this up." She turned to Sarah. "Check the delivery van's license plate on the security camera. We are going to find out who drove it. We are going to find out who leaked this address." Elena looked at the shattered glass. "He wants a war. He thinks he is fighting a victim." She looked at her reflection in the dark window of the office door. She saw the bruise on her cheek. It did not look like an injury anymore. It looked like war paint. He is wrong. She turned and walked back to her room. She did not walk like a refugee. She walked like an architect inspecting a site. Chloe watched her go. A small, reluctant smirk touched the corner of the teenager's mouth. Elena sat on her bunk. She reached under her mattress and pulled out a small notebook she had stolen from the supply closet. She opened it to the first page. She did not write, "Dear Diary." She wrote one word in capital letters. Gavin. And then she drew a line through it, a line so deep the pen tore the paper. He had made a mistake. He had taken away her fear by giving her something else. He had given her a target. The television in the common room was an old boxy model that hummed with static, but the picture was clear enough to break Elena's heart. It was Wednesday morning. The smell of burnt toast and instant coffee hung heavy in the air. 6 other women sat on the mismatched sofas, but nobody was speaking. They were all looking at the screen. On the local news channel, the headline banner was bright red: "Prominent architect accused of domestic assault released on bail." Elena felt the blood drain from her face. She gripped the edge of the cushion until her knuckles turned white. He was out. It had not even been 72 hours. He was supposed to be in a cell. He was supposed to be afraid. But Gavin Thorne was not in a cell. He was sitting on the plush beige couch of Atlanta Today. He was not wearing the bloody suit from the hospital. He was wearing a soft blue cashmere sweater and dark jeans. He looked tired. He had dark circles under his eyes that were perfectly placed to suggest sleepless nights of worry rather than guilt. He held a mug of tea in both hands. He looked vulnerable. He looked like the victim. The host was a woman named Diane, who usually interviewed chefs and local heroes. She leaned forward with an expression of deep sympathy. "Gavin, thank you for being here. I know this is an incredibly difficult time for your family." Gavin nodded slowly. He looked down at his hands before looking into the camera. His eyes were wet. "Thank you, Diane. I felt I had to speak. There are so many rumors flying around, and I need to protect my wife, even from herself." Elena stood up. Her legs felt weak. She wanted to throw something at the screen, but she could not move. She was paralyzed by the sheer audacity of his performance. "The police report mentions injuries, Gavin." Diane pressed gently. Gavin sighed. It was a long, tragic exhale. "Elena has been struggling for a long time, Diane. We have tried to keep it private. We wanted to protect her dignity." He paused as if the words were too painful to say. "She has a severe dependency on prescription painkillers. It started after a car accident 3 years ago. It causes hallucinations, balance issues, mood swings. The injuries you saw were from a fall. She was confused. She was looking for pills. I tried to stop her and she fell." "Liar." Elena screamed the word. It tore out of her throat. "Liar. You are a liar." The women in the room looked at her. Some looked pitying. Others looked doubtful. Gavin was so convincing. He was so handsome and sad. On the screen, Gavin wiped a single tear from his cheek. "I love her more than anything. I just want her to come home. We have a bed waiting for her at a rehabilitation facility in Malibu. I am not pressing charges for the false report. I just want my wife back so we can heal." The segment ended. The screen cut to a commercial for laundry detergent. Elena collapsed back onto the sofa. The room spun. He had done it. In 3 minutes, he had erased her pain and replaced it with a story of his own martyrdom. He had turned her into a junkie. Sarah walked into the room. She turned off the television. Her face was tight. "Do not listen to him, Elena. It is a strategy. It is called DARVO, deny, attack, and reverse victim and offender. But the damage was already done. By noon, the digital world had caught fire. Elena sat in the small administrative office. Sarah had allowed her 15 minutes on the secure iPad to check her email for any messages from her lawyer. But Elena did not check her email. She made the mistake of opening social media. The hashtag Gavin Thorne was trending in Atlanta. Elena clicked on it. It was a digital execution. Thousands of comments poured in. They were not supportive. They were vicious. Gavin's PR team had clearly been working overtime, but the public was doing the heavy lifting for free. A user named Real Housewife ATL wrote, "I have met Gavin. He is the sweetest man. He built the orphanage downtown. No way he hit her. She looks crazy in those photos." Another user named TruthSeeker99 commented, "Look at her eyes in the gala photos from last year. Dilated pupils. Definitely opioids. Poor guy. He tries to help her and she has him arrested. Gold digger. Ungrateful. She just wants a divorce settlement. I would let Gavin hit me if I could live in that house." Elena read them all. She drank the poison, drank the cull. Each comment was a stone thrown at her by a stranger. They did not know her. They did not know about the cigar burns. They did not know about the night she slept on the bathroom floor because she was afraid to breathe too loudly. They only knew the architect, the man who smiled on magazine covers, the man who wore soft blue sweaters and cried on morning television. She felt a darkness rising up inside her. It was heavy and suffocating. It was the feeling of being buried alive. "What is the point?" she whispered to the empty room. "He has all the money. He has the lawyers. And now he has the world." She dropped the iPad on the desk. She put her head in her hands. The fight left her body. It drained out like water from a cracked vase. She was just a woman in a shelter wearing donated jeans. He was a titan. Maybe he was right. Maybe she was the crazy one. Maybe she should just go to the rehab center. At least there she would have a soft bed. At least there the war would be over. The door to the office opened. Elena did not look up. She expected Sarah with her platitudes about healing and time, but it was not Sarah. "Get up." The voice was raspy and rude. Elena looked up. Chloe was standing in the doorway. The teenager was wearing her signature oversized black t-shirt and combat boots that were held together with duct tape. She was holding the iPad that Elena had dropped. "Get out, Chloe. I am not in the mood." Elena wiped her face. She tried to compose herself, but she was shaking. Chloe walked into the room and kicked the door shut with her heel. She threw the iPad onto Elena's lap. "Look at it," Chloe commanded. "I saw it. I saw what they are saying." Elena pushed the tablet away. "So that is it." Chloe crossed her arms. Her scars were visible in the harsh fluorescent light. "You see a few mean tweets from people who live in their mother's basements, and you quit. You are pathetic." Elena stood up. Anger flared in her chest. It was a weak flame, but it was there. "You do not understand. He is not just some guy. He is a monster who looks like a saint. He has turned everyone against me. My sister, the police, the public. I am alone, Chloe. I have nothing. You have the truth." Chloe spat the words. "And that has to be enough because it is all you are going to get." The girl stepped closer. She smelled of cigarette smoke and cheap peppermint gum. She looked Elena in the eye. "My stepfather was a city councilman." Chloe said it quietly. The sarcasm was gone from her voice. "He was the man who handed out turkeys at Thanksgiving. He was the man who cut ribbons at new libraries. Everyone loved him. He was a pillar of the community." Elena stopped breathing. She looked at the girl. "He came into my room at night for 3 years, starting when I was 12. Chloe's voice did not shake. It was flat and hard like a stone. "I told my mom. She said I was dreaming. I told my school counselor. She called him. He came to the school in his suit and tie. He cried. He told them I was acting out because I missed my real dad. He told them I was a troubled child." Elena reached out a hand, but Chloe stepped back. She did not want pity. They believed him. Of course they believed him. He was the councilman. I was just the moody teenager. He put me in a psychiatric ward for 6 months. He medicated me until I drooled. And when I got out, he did it again. Chloe pointed at the screen of the iPad where Gavin's face was paused in a frozen, pixelated smile. "That is the game, Elena. They win because they look good. They win because we are messy. Victims are ugly. We cry, we scream, we have snot on our faces. We are inconvenient. Chloe leaned over the desk. Her dark eyes were burning. I ran away. I live in this dump. I have nothing. But I know one thing. If you let him write the story, he wins forever. She tapped the screen hard with her finger. He is lying. You know he is lying. So prove it. How? Elena asked. Her voice broke. He locked everything. He has the house. He has the files. Chloe smirked. It was a terrifying expression on such a young face. He is a man. Men like him are arrogant. They think they are gods. They think nobody can touch them. That is their weakness. Chloe pulled a chair over and straddled it backwards. You lived with him. You know where he keeps his secrets. You told me about the safe. You told me about the hard drive he hides in the wall. Elena blinked. She remembered whispering that to Chloe in the dark 2 nights ago. I cannot get back in there. He has security. He has cameras. So what? Chloe shrugged. He is on TV right now. That means he is distracted. He is busy playing the victim. He thinks you are cowering in a hole, crying over Instagram comments. He thinks you are broken. Chloe looked at Elena's hands, which were twisting a tissue into shreds. Are you broken, Elena? Or are you just bruised? Elena looked down at her hands. She looked at the ring finger where her wedding band used to be. The skin was pale there. She thought about Gavin's face on the screen. The fake tears. The smooth lies about her addiction. He was erasing her. He was rewriting her history while she was still alive. If she did nothing, she would become the woman he described. She would be the crazy ex-wife, the junkie, the tragedy. But if she fought... A cold clarity washed over her. It was the same feeling she used to get when she looked at a chaotic construction site and saw the structure hidden underneath. He is hosting the auction on Friday, Elena said. Her voice was steady. The annual Architectural Digest charity auction. It is at the house. He never cancels it. It is his biggest night of the year. Chloe raised an eyebrow. A party. That means people. That means noise. That means doors being opened. He will have caterers, valet parking, security staff. Elena's mind began to race. She was not thinking like a victim anymore. She was thinking like a designer. She was visualizing the floor plan, the exits, the blind spots. The safe is in his study, behind the portrait of his father. He keeps the digital key on a USB drive in his desk drawer, but the biometric scanner needs his fingerprint. Chloe laughed. It was a dry hacking sound. Fingerprints are hard, but passwords are easy. Does he have a backup code? Elena closed her eyes. She pictured the keypad, his mother's birthday. He hates her, but he never forgets it. August 15th, 1952. She opened her eyes. She looked at the iPad again. She looked at the hateful comments. Gold digger. No, she was not digging for gold. She was digging for dynamite. I'm going to get that hard drive, Elena said. Chloe smiled. This time it reached her eyes. Now you are talking, but you cannot do it alone. You need a distraction. You need a lookout. Elena looked at the teenager. She saw the scars on her arms. She saw the shared history of silence and pain. I cannot ask you to do this, Chloe. It is dangerous. If we get caught, I go to juvenile detention. Big deal. I have been there before. The food is better than here. Chloe stood up. But if we win, if we take down a guy like that... She looked at the ceiling as if imagining the sky opening up. That would be worth it. That would be justice for both of us. Elena stood up too. She felt tall for the first time in days. The shame was still there, but it was being pushed aside by adrenaline. We need a plan, Elena said. We need a map of the house. We need a way past the cameras. And we need black clothes. Chloe grinned. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a stick of gum. I can steal the clothes from the donation bin. You draw the map. Elena picked up a pen from the desk. She grabbed a blank sheet of printer paper. She did not draw a flower or a heart. She drew a straight line, then a perpendicular one. She drew walls, she drew windows, she drew the fortress that had been her prison. She was an architect too, and she was about to design her own escape. The realization came to Elena not like a lightning bolt, but like the slow, creeping dawn of a cold winter morning. She was sitting on the floor of the shelter common room with the blueprints spread out around her. Chloe was asleep on the sofa with her mouth slightly open, but Elena was wide awake. Her finger traced the lines of the house she had designed. She knew every inch of the Thorne estate. She knew where the pipes ran inside the walls. She knew which floorboards creaked in the hallway. But more importantly, she knew what the house was built on. It was not built on love. It was not built on family. It was built on money that had been washed clean. Elena looked at the medical report on her lap. Dr. Clare had written everything down, the burns, the fractures, the contusions. But Elena knew the justice system. She knew that a good lawyer could twist medical evidence. They would say she was clumsy. They would say she was self-harming. They would bring in experts to testify that her injuries were consistent with a fall. It would be her word against his, and Gavin Thorne had a voice that could charm a cobra. She needed something else. She needed something that did not rely on tears or testimony. She needed numbers. Elena closed her eyes and pictured the study. It was a room of mahogany and leather. It smelled of old books and expensive scotch. On the south wall, there was a massive oil painting of Gavin's father. It was a pretentious piece that Gavin hated but kept for tradition. Behind the heavy frame was a wall safe. Inside that safe was a black external hard drive. She had seen it once by accident. 2 years ago, she had walked in while Gavin was transferring files. He had slammed the laptop shut. His face had gone pale. He had grabbed her arm and told her that the drive contained client confidentiality agreements. But later that night, when he was drunk, he had boasted about his genius. He had told her that he was moving money through shell companies in the Cayman Islands. He called it creative architecture. That hard drive was his heart. It contained the ledger of his sins. If she took it, she would not just be exposing a wife-beater. She would be exposing a felon. The IRS did not care about charming smiles. The FBI did not care about gala dinners. Elena opened her eyes. The fear was still there, but it was different now. It was focused. Friday night came with a humid thickness that blanketed Atlanta. The air felt heavy and charged with electricity. Elena sat in the passenger seat of a battered Honda Civic. Her sister Mia was driving. Mia's hands were gripping the steering wheel so tightly, her knuckles looked like polished bone. "Are you sure about this?" Mia whispered. Her voice was trembling. "We can turn around. We can go to the police and tell them everything. The police cannot help me get into that safe, Mia. They need a warrant. And by the time they get a warrant, Gavin will have destroyed the drive. He knows I'm coming for him. I have to do this tonight while he is distracted." Elena looked out the window. They were parked 3 streets away from the estate. She could see the glow of the floodlights in the distance. The sky above the house was purple with light pollution. The Architectural Digest Charity Gala. It was the event of the season. 500 guests, champagne towers, valet parking, and Gavin Thorne playing the role of the grieving husband while sipping vintage Pinot Noir. "He thinks I am hiding in a hole," Elena said. She pulled a black beanie over her hair. She was wearing black cargo pants and a black turtleneck she had found in the donation bin. She looked like a shadow. "He thinks I am broken. He does not expect me to walk through his front door. I am not walking through the front door. I know." Mia swallowed hard. "I will wait here. If you are not back in 30 minutes, I am driving this car through the front gate and screaming fire. 20 minutes. Elena checked the cheap digital watch on her wrist. "Give me 20 minutes. Keep the engine running." Elena opened the door and slipped into the night. She did not walk on the sidewalk. She moved through the wooded buffer zone that separated the wealthy estates. The ground was soft and wet. Branches scratched at her face, but she did not feel them. She was in a trance state. Her heart was beating a slow, heavy rhythm against her ribs. She reached the perimeter fence. It was 8 feet of wrought iron designed to look elegant while keeping the rabble out. But Elena knew the weakness. 3 years ago, she had argued with the landscape architect about the drainage near the pool house. The ground there had settled, causing a gap beneath the iron bars. It was small. A man could not fit, but a desperate woman could. Elena dropped to her belly. The mud seeped into her clothes instantly. It was cold and slimy. She dragged herself under the fence. Her hip bones scraped against the metal, but she pushed through. She gasped as she emerged on the perfectly manicured lawn of her own home. She was inside. The house loomed above her like a lit-up cruise ship. The rear terrace was crowded with people. She could hear the clink of crystal glasses and the murmur of polite conversation. A string quartet was playing Mozart. The music drifted across the lawn. It was surreal. It was a nightmare wrapped in silk. Elena stayed low. She crouched behind the thick hedge of hydrangeas. She moved toward the side of the house near the kitchen entrance. There were caterers everywhere. They were moving in a chaotic ballet, carrying trays of hors d'oeuvres. They were smoking cigarettes by the loading dock. They were distracted. Elena waited for a gap. A waiter carrying a tray of empty glasses kicked the service door open and propped it with a brick to let some air in. He turned his back to light a cigarette. Elena moved. She was a ghost. She slipped through the door before the smoke from his lighter even hit the air. The kitchen was a war zone of chefs and sous chefs shouting orders. Steam rose from pots. The smell of roasted lamb and rosemary was overpowering. Elena pressed herself against the wall behind a stack of crates filled with wine. Nobody looked at her. They were looking at the food. To them, she was invisible. She was just a shadow in a corner. She slipped into the servants' hallway. The noise of the kitchen faded, instantly replaced by the muffled thrum of the party in the great hall. This was the dangerous part. She had to cross the east corridor to get to the study. The corridor was not part of the party zone, but guests often wandered there looking for the bathroom or a quiet place to make a call. And there were guards. Gavin had hired a private security firm. Elena had seen the invoices. These were not mall cops. These were ex-military men who looked at everything as a threat. Elena peeked around the corner. The hallway was empty. The Persian runner rug stretched out like a red tongue. She stepped out. Her soft-soled boots made no sound. She walked fast. She did not run. Running attracted attention. She walked with purpose. She was halfway down the hall when she heard it. The click of a door handle turning. Elena froze. Her heart slammed into her throat. The door to the powder room on her left was opening. She had 2 seconds. There was nowhere to hide. The hallway was long and straight. Elena did not hide. She turned her back to the opening door and knelt down by the electrical outlet. She pulled her phone out and pretended to be examining the socket. A woman in a gold-sequined dress stepped out. She was laughing into her phone. "I know, darling, it is absolutely tragic about his wife, but the shrimp cocktail is divine." The woman walked right past Elena. She did not even look down. To her, Elena was just part of the furniture, a cleaner, a maintenance worker, someone who did not exist in her glittering world. Elena let out a breath that shook her entire body. She waited for the woman's heels to click away on the marble floor. She stood up and sprinted the last 20 feet to the study. The door was closed. Elena gripped the brass handle. Her palm was sweating. If it was locked, she was dead. She had not brought a lockpick. She had assumed Gavin would leave it open for access during the party. She turned the handle. It resisted for a second and then turned. The latch clicked. Elena slipped inside and closed the door softly behind her. The silence in the study was profound. The party noise was just a distant vibration here. The room was dark, illuminated only by the moonlight filtering through the heavy velvet curtains. It smelled of him. It smelled of sandalwood and expensive tobacco and the leather polish he insisted on using. The scent hit Elena like a physical blow. It triggered a panic response so violent she almost fell to her knees. Her body remembered pain that her mind tried to suppress. She forced herself to breathe. "He is not here. You are the architect. This is your room." She walked to the south wall. The portrait of Gavin's father stared down at her with disapproving eyes. She reached behind the heavy gold frame. Her fingers searched for the latch. There. She found the small release button. She pressed it. The painting swung outward on hidden hinges. The safe was revealed. It was a sleek gray metal box embedded in the wall. Elena stared at the digital keypad. The numbers glowed a faint, ominous red in the dark. She raised her hand. Her fingers were trembling so badly she had to grip her own wrist to steady them. She had one chance. If she got the code wrong 3 times, the safe would lock down and send a silent alarm to Gavin's phone. She closed her eyes. She remembered the nights he would come home drunk and mutter about his passwords. He was a narcissist, but he was sentimental about his own origins. August 15th, 1952, his mother's birthday. The only woman he had ever feared. Elena pressed the keys. 0, 8, 1, 5, 5, 2. She held her breath. The silence stretched for 1,000,000 years. Beep. The light on the keypad turned green. The sound of the heavy bolts retracting was the most beautiful music Elena had ever heard. It sounded like freedom. She pulled the handle. The heavy door swung open. The safe was not empty. There were stacks of cash, passports, a velvet box containing a diamond necklace she had never seen. And there in the back, sitting on top of a pile of legal documents, was the drive. It was small and black and unremarkable. It looked like something you would buy at an office supply store for $50, but it weighed 1,000 tons. Elena reached in. Her hand closed around the cool plastic. She had it. She had his life in her hand. She shoved the drive into her cargo pocket and zipped it shut. She did not touch the cash. She did not touch the diamonds. She was not a thief. She was a repo woman taking back her future. She closed the safe door. She spun the lock. She swung the painting back into place. She turned to leave. And then the doorknob turned. Elena froze. The blood in her veins turned to ice. Someone was coming in. There was no time to hide under the desk. There was no closet. The curtains were too sheer. Elena looked around frantically. Her eyes landed on the tall, antique grandfather clock in the corner. It was a massive piece of furniture that she had bought at an estate sale in Savannah. The body of the clock was wide enough for a person if they were thin. She dove for it. She yanked the narrow wooden door open and squeezed herself inside the hollow cavity of the clock. She pulled the door shut just as the study door opened. She was pressed against the heavy brass pendulums. She could smell the dust and the old wood. She held her breath. She made herself small. She made herself nothing. Light from the hallway flooded the room. 2 figures walked in. One was tall and broad. Even in the dark, Elena recognized the silhouette. It was Gavin, and he was not alone. The second figure was shorter, stocky. It was his head of security, a man named Victor who had eyes like a shark. "Did you sweep the room?" Gavin's voice was right there. He was 10 feet away. He sounded annoyed. "I swept it an hour ago, Mr. Thorne. It is clear." I heard a noise. I was in the hallway talking to the senator and I heard a click, like a latch. Gavin walked deeper into the room. His footsteps were heavy on the Persian rug. Elena pressed her hand over her mouth. Her heart was hammering so hard against the wood of the clock she was terrified he would hear it. Thump, thump, thump. Gavin stopped. He was standing right in front of the clock. Elena could see him through the thin crack in the wood. She could see the blue of his sweater. She could see the glass of wine in his hand. He turned his head. He looked at the painting. "Is the safe secure?" "Yes, sir. The alarm is active. If anyone touched it, you would know." Gavin stared at the painting for a long moment. He took a sip of wine. "I have a bad feeling, Victor. She is out there. I can feel her. She is like a rat in the walls." He turned back toward the door. "Double the perimeter guard. I want a man on the terrace and another one by the pool house. If you see anything that moves you, catch it. And do not be gentle." "Yes, sir." Gavin walked out. Victor followed him, closing the door behind them. Elena slumped against the inside of the clock. Her legs gave out. She slid down to the bottom of the casing, gasping for air. The darkness of the clock felt like a coffin, but she was alive, and she had the drive. She waited 1 minute, 2 minutes, then she pushed the clock door open. She had to get out, but the exit route was burned. He had just ordered guards to the pool house. The gap under the fence was a trap now. She stood in the dark study. The drive burned in her pocket. She needed a new way out, and she needed it now. Elena stood in the center of the study. The adrenaline was no longer a rush. It was a cold and steady hum in her blood. She touched the cargo pocket of her pants. The hard drive was there. It was heavy against her thigh. It was the ledger of his financial crimes. It was the proof that Gavin Thorne was a thief and a fraud. But something else was nagging at her. When she had grabbed the drive, she had also grabbed a thick manila envelope that sat beneath it. It was heavy. It felt like cardstock. She had 30 seconds before the guard patrol circled back. She needed to know what was in the envelope. If it was just deeds or contracts, she would leave it. She did not want to be charged with theft of property that did not matter. She opened the metal clasp. She slid the contents out into her palm. The air left her lungs in a silent scream. They were not contracts. They were photographs. They were Polaroids. The first one was dated 3 years ago. It showed a close-up of a bruise on a woman's upper arm. The skin was purple and yellow. The lighting was professional. The composition was artistic. It was her arm. She flipped to the next one. Her swollen lip from the Christmas party. The next. The black eye from the anniversary dinner. The next. The cigar burn. There were dozens of them. On the white border of each photo, Gavin had written a date and a caption in his elegant architectural script. October 3rd. Disobedience? January 12th. Lesson learned. March 4th. The crying stops. He had not just hurt her. He had documented it. He had treated her pain like a project. He had cataloged her destruction the same way he cataloged the construction of a skyscraper. It was a trophy collection. It was the sickest thing she had ever seen. Elena shoved the photos back into the envelope. Her hands were shaking violently. This was not just evidence of assault. This was evidence of a psychopath. This proved premeditation. This proved that the violence was not a loss of control. It was the control. She shoved the envelope into her other pocket. She zipped it tight. She had the money. She had the monster. Now she just had to survive. She moved to the study door. She pressed her ear against the wood. Silence. The music from the party was still playing a cheerful waltz. She opened the door 1 inch. The hallway was empty. Elena slipped out. She did not go back toward the kitchen. The kitchen was too busy. She turned left toward the servants' staircase. It was a narrow spiral stair that led down to the laundry room near the garage. It was tight and dark, and Gavin never used it because he said it smelled of detergent. She reached the small door panel disguised as wainscoting. She pushed the hidden latch. The panel clicked open. "Going somewhere, Elena." The voice came from behind her. It was smooth. It was calm. It was the voice of a man who was discussing the weather. Elena froze. Her hand was still on the latch of the secret door. She turned around slowly. Gavin stood at the end of the hallway. He was 20 feet away. He was holding a glass of red wine. He looked immaculate in his blue sweater. He was not angry. He was smiling. "I knew you would come." He took a sip of wine. "I felt you. It is a connection we have. Soulmates." He took a step forward. "Did you find what you were looking for? Did you open the safe? I assume you used my mother's death date. You always were clever with dates." Elena did not speak. She calculated the distance. 20 feet. He was faster than her. He was stronger than her. "Victor," Gavin called out without looking away from Elena. The head of security stepped out from the shadows behind Gavin. He was holding a taser. The black plastic weapon looked huge in his hand. "Secure the perimeter. No one leaves, and bring the car around. We are taking my wife to the rehabilitation center tonight. She is having a severe episode." Victor nodded and raised the radio to his lips. Elena looked at Gavin. She saw the triumph in his eyes. He thought he had won. He thought she was the same woman who cowered in the bathroom. She reached into her pocket. "Do not do it, Elena," Gavin warned. "Put your hands up. You are sick. We are going to help you." Elena gripped the heavy brass paperweight she had swiped from the desk. It was a sphere of solid metal. "I am not sick, Gavin." She said the words clearly. Her voice did not shake. "I am done." She threw the paperweight. She did not throw it at Gavin. She knew she would miss. She threw it at the fire alarm pull station on the wall next to him. The heavy brass ball hit the red plastic box with a shattering crack. The alarm screamed. It was a deafening, piercing sound that instantly cut through the Mozart and the laughter outside. Strobe lights began to flash in the hallway. Gavin flinched. He covered his ears instinctively. In that split second of distraction, Elena moved. She did not go through the secret door. That was a trap now. She turned and sprinted toward the French doors at the end of the hall, the doors that led to the main terrace. "Stop her!" Gavin screamed. He dropped his wine glass. It shattered on the floor, spraying red liquid like blood. Elena ran. She ran with her heart in her throat. She could hear heavy boots pounding behind her. Victor was fast. She hit the French doors with her shoulder. The glass rattled, but the latch gave way. She burst out onto the terrace. Chaos. The alarm had turned the elegant gala into a stampede. 500 wealthy guests were screaming and pushing toward the exits. Waiters dropped trays. Women tripped in their gowns. Elena dove into the crowd. She was small. She was dressed in black. She became a shadow in the panic. "There she is!" Victor's voice roared over the alarm. Elena ducked under the arm of a senator. She pushed past a woman holding a crying poodle. She used the crowd as a human shield. She weaved through the bodies, heading for the stone balustrade that overlooked the driveway. She reached the edge. It was a 10-foot drop to the gravel below. She did not hesitate. She vaulted over the stone railing. She hit the ground hard. Her ankle twisted, and pain shot up her leg like fire. But she rolled. She kept moving. She scrambled to her feet. She was in the driveway. The valet stand was overwhelmed with people demanding their cars. Elena spotted the perimeter fence. The main gate was closing. The automatic iron gates were swinging shut to lock everyone in until the fire department arrived. She sprinted. She could hear Gavin's voice now. He was on the terrace balcony above her. "Elena, you cannot run from me. I own this town." She saw the gap between the closing gates. 5 feet, 4 feet. A black Honda Civic screeched around the corner. It jumped the curb. It smashed through a row of perfectly trimmed hedges. The passenger door flew open. "Get in!" Mia screamed. Elena threw herself into the moving car. She dove across the seat. Mia slammed on the gas. The Honda roared. The tires spun on the gravel, sending a spray of stones into the air. The gate was closing. 3 feet, 2 feet. Mia did not brake. She floored it. The car shot through the gap. The side mirror scraped against the iron with a screech of tearing metal. Sparks flew, but they were through. They hit the main road. Mia swerved around a confused fire truck that was just arriving with its sirens wailing. Elena pulled herself up into the seat. She slammed the door shut. She looked back. Through the rear window, she could see the estate glowing on the hill. The strobe lights were still flashing. It looked like a castle under siege. And on the driveway, standing alone in the red light, she saw a tiny figure in a blue sweater. He was watching them go. Elena reached into her pocket. She pulled out the drive. She pulled out the envelope. She held them tight against her chest. "Are you okay?" Mia yelled over the sound of the engine. She was crying and laughing at the same time. Elena looked at her sister. She looked at the road stretching out before them. It was dark, but the headlights cut a path through the night. She took a deep breath. Her ribs hurt. Her ankle throbbed. She was covered in mud and sweat, but for the first time in 10 years, she did not feel afraid. "I am better than okay, Mia," Elena whispered. "I have his soul in my pocket, and I am going to burn it." The Fulton County Superior Court was not designed for comfort. It was designed for judgment. The air conditioning in courtroom 302 was humming loudly, but it could not cool the suffocating heat of the bodies packed into the mahogany benches. Every seat was taken. Reporters from every major network in Atlanta were squeezed into the back row, their pens poised like daggers. Sketch artists sharpened their charcoal pencils. They were all there for the show. They were there to see the fall of the House of Thorne. Gavin entered the room at exactly 9 o'clock in the morning. He did not look like a man facing 8 felony counts, including aggravated assault and money laundering. He looked like he was arriving at a board meeting to accept an award. He wore a navy blue suit that was tailored to within an inch of its life. His tie was a soft silk crimson. His hair was perfectly coiffed. He walked past the press gallery and gave a small, tight nod. It was the nod of a man who had nothing to hide. It was a masterclass in nonverbal manipulation. He sat down at the defense table and poured himself a glass of water. His hands were steady. He looked at the jury box. He made eye contact with a middle-aged woman in the front row and offered her a humble, almost shy smile. Elena watched him from the prosecution table. She felt a wave of nausea roll through her stomach. It was physical. It was the body remembering what the mind was trying to conquer. She was not wearing black today. She was wearing a structured suit in slate gray. She wore no makeup to hide the fading yellow bruise on her jaw. She wanted them to see it. She wanted them to see the map he had drawn on her skin. "All rise." The bailiff's voice boomed. Judge Martha Valencia swept into the room. She was a formidable woman with silver hair and eyes that suffered no fools. She sat down and arranged her robes. "Be seated." The room settled. The noise of rustling fabric and coughing died down. "Mr. Sterling, you may call your first witness for the cross-examination." Gavin's lawyer stood up. Marcus Sterling was the kind of lawyer who cost $1,000 an hour. He was silver-tongued and ruthless. He adjusted his cufflinks and walked toward the witness stand where Elena was already seated. He smiled at her. It was the smile of a wolf looking at a lamb. "Mrs. Thorne," Sterling began. His voice was smooth like aged whiskey. "We have heard your testimony. We have seen the photos. They are indeed distressing, but we are here to find the truth. And the truth is often complicated, is it not?" Elena gripped the armrests of the wooden chair. "The truth is simple, Mr. Sterling. Is it?" Sterling turned to the jury. "Let us discuss the night of the incident. You claim my client pushed you. You claim he beat you. But the medical report from 3 years ago tells a different story about your health." He picked up a piece of paper from his table. "Is it true that you have a prescription for diazepam, also known as Valium?" Elena nodded. "Yes." "Is it true that you have a prescription for oxycodone?" "Yes." Sterling walked closer to the stand. He invaded her personal space just enough to be intimidating. "And is it true, Mrs. Thorne, that one of the side effects of mixing these medications is dizziness, confusion, hallucinations, paranoia?" Objection. The district attorney stood up. "Mr. Sterling is speculating. Sustained. Stick to the facts, counselor." Judge Valencia warned. Sterling pivoted. He did not lose his rhythm. "Mrs. Thorne, on the night you claim my client attacked you, did you have these drugs in your system?" Elena hesitated. The room went silent. She could feel Gavin's eyes on her. She knew what he was thinking. He was thinking he had won. He had set this trap years ago when he convinced her to see his private doctor for her anxiety. He had built this cage of pills so he could lock her inside it one day. "Yes," Elena whispered. "I am sorry I did not hear you." Sterling cupped his ear theatrically. "Yes," Elena said louder. "I had taken a sedative." Sterling spun around to face the jury. He spread his arms wide. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have a woman who admits to being under the influence of powerful narcotics. A woman who, by her own admission, was chemically altered. And yet she asks us to believe that her loving husband is a monster. She asks us to send a pillar of this community to prison based on the memories of a drug-induced haze." He turned back to Elena. His voice dropped to a sneer. "You were high, Mrs. Thorne. You fell down the stairs because you were high. And when you woke up, you needed someone to blame, so you blamed the man who has done nothing but pay for your lifestyle and your rehab. Isn't that the truth?" Gavin leaned back in his chair. He did not smile, but his posture screamed victory. The jury looked at Elena. Their faces were skeptical. They saw a rich woman with a pill problem. They saw a narrative they understood. Elena looked at Sterling. Then she looked at Gavin. She remembered the clock. She remembered the cold metal of the hard drive against her thigh. She remembered Chloe's voice saying, "Are you broken, or are you just bruised?" She took a deep breath. She did not look down at her lap. She looked directly at the jury. She locked eyes with the foreman. "I was not high." Elena spoke. Her voice was not loud, but it was clear as a bell. It cut through the humidity of the courtroom. "I was numbed." Sterling tried to interrupt. "Mrs. Thorne, a yes or no will suffice." "No, Mr. Sterling. You asked for the truth." Elena turned to the judge. "May I answer the question fully, Your Honor?" Judge Valencia looked at Elena over her spectacles. She saw something in Elena's face. It was not the look of a victim. It was the look of a witness. "You may answer." Elena turned back to the jury. She stripped her soul bare in front of strangers. "I took the pills, Mr. Sterling. You are right. I took them every night at 6 o'clock. Do you know why?" She did not wait for him to answer. Because 6:30 is when Gavin's car pulls into the driveway. A gasp rippled through the gallery. I took them because when I heard the garage door open, my heart would beat so fast I thought I would have a heart attack. I took them because if I was too alert, I might say the wrong thing. I might ask about his day in the wrong tone. I might put the fork on the wrong side of the plate. And if I did those things, I would be punished. Gavin's face lost its color. He sat up straighter. I did not take them to get high. I took them to survive. I took them so that when he burned my arm with a cigar, I would not scream and wake up the neighbors. Because if the neighbors woke up, he would hit me harder. Elena lifted her arm. She pulled back the sleeve of her gray jacket. She revealed the circular scar. It was undeniable. It was ugly. "Is this a hallucination, Mr. Sterling?" she asked. Sterling froze. He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. "Is the broken jaw from 2 years ago a side effect of Valium? Are the fractured ribs a symptom of confusion?" Elena stood up. She was trembling, but it was the trembling of a bowstring before it releases an arrow. "You want to paint me as an addict? Fine. I was addicted to fear. I was addicted to the hope that if I made myself small enough and quiet enough, he would stop hurting me. But I'm not quiet anymore, and I am not small." She looked at Gavin. For the first time in 10 years, she looked at him without flinching. She saw the fear in his eyes. He was losing the room. I took the pills to endure him, but I stopped taking them the night I left. I am sober, Mr. Sterling, and I remember everything. The courtroom was dead silent. The only sound was the scratching of the stenographer's machine. The jury was not looking at Elena with skepticism anymore. They were looking at Gavin with horror. Sterling cleared his throat. He shuffled his papers. His confident attack had shattered against the wall of her honesty. "No further questions," he muttered and sat down. Gavin did not look at the jury. He stared at the table. His hand gripped the water glass so hard that for a second, Elena thought it would shatter. She sat back down. She smoothed her skirt. She felt light. The weight of the secret was gone. She had admitted her weakness, and in doing so, she had found her greatest weapon. The truth was not that she was perfect. The truth was that she had survived, and that was something no lawyer could argue away. The courtroom air was thick with the residue of Elena's testimony. The jury was shifting in their seats, looking at Gavin with a new and dangerous curiosity. But the prosecution was not finished. The district attorney stood up. He was a tall man with the posture of a former Marine and the patience of a saint. "Your Honor, the people call Chloe Miller to the stand." A murmur rippled through the gallery. Gavin whispered furiously to his lawyer. He did not know who Chloe Miller was. He had never bothered to learn the names of the people Elena lived with in the shelter. To him, they were just faceless extras in his tragedy. Chloe walked in. She was not wearing her oversized black t-shirt. She was wearing a simple white blouse and black trousers that Sarah had bought her from a thrift store. She looked young. She looked vulnerable. But when she sat in the witness chair, her eyes were old. "State your name for the record." "Chloe Miller." "Miss Miller. Do you know the defendant, Gavin Thorne?" Chloe looked at Gavin. She did not blink. "I know him. I saw him outside the women's shelter on Peach Street 3 days ago." "Objection!" Sterling shot up from his seat. "This is hearsay, Your Honor. My client has never been to a shelter. I saw him." Chloe cut through the lawyer's objection with a voice like a razor blade. He was in a black sedan. He rolled down the window. He was watching the delivery van drop off a package. "What was in the package, Miss Miller?" the district attorney asked. "White lilies, with a card. It was a threat." Sterling laughed. It was a dry, condescending sound. "A threat. Flowers are a threat now. Since when is a romantic gesture a crime? Since the card said he knew where we lived." Chloe leaned into the microphone. "Since the card made 20 women terrified to sleep that night. Since he broke a restraining order just to prove he could touch us whenever he wanted." Sterling opened his mouth to argue, but the district attorney raised a hand. "We will return to the restraining order momentarily, but first, Your Honor, I would like to introduce Exhibit G." The bailiff wheeled a large monitor into the center of the room. He connected a laptop. The district attorney held up a clear plastic evidence bag. Inside was the black hard drive Elena had taken from the safe. This drive was recovered from the defendant's home safe. It is password protected. The password was his mother's birthday. Gavin went rigid. His face turned the color of ash. He stopped whispering to his lawyer. He stopped moving entirely. He looked at the black square of plastic as if it were a live grenade. The drive contains 2 folders. The district attorney tapped the keyboard. The first folder is labeled Finances. We have already turned this data over to the Federal Bureau of Investigation. It details a decade of money laundering through shell companies in the Cayman Islands. It shows wire transfers that do not match the reported income of Thorne Architecture. The press gallery exploded. Reporters were typing frantically on their phones. This was not just domestic abuse anymore. This was the collapse of an empire. But that is for the federal courts to decide. The district attorney continued. His voice dropped an octave. It became heavy and somber. We are here to discuss the second folder, the folder labeled Projects. He hit a key. An image appeared on the large screen. It was a Polaroid. It was high resolution. The lighting was artistic. It showed a woman's back. The skin was marred by the dark, distinct imprint of a belt buckle. Beneath the injury, written in elegant black ink, was a date and a caption. November 10th. Correction. The courtroom gasped. It was a collective sound of horror. The district attorney clicked again. Another photo, a swollen lip. December 25th. Silence is golden. Another. The circular cigar burn on the arm. March 4th. The crying stops. These are not medical records, Mr. Sterling. The district attorney pointed at the screen. These are trophies. These are souvenirs. Your client did not just hurt his wife. He curated her pain. He cataloged it like a collection of rare butterflies. Elena looked at the screen. She saw her own history displayed in 10-foot high definition. She saw the dates. She saw the handwriting she had once loved. It was grotesque, but it was also the end. Gavin stared at the screen. He was shaking. He was not shaking with fear. He was shaking with rage. His private world was being violated. His art was being mocked. His control was evaporating under the harsh lights of the courtroom. "Turn it off," Gavin hissed. "Turn it off right now." The district attorney ignored him. He turned to the jury. The defense claims Mrs. Thorne is clumsy. They claim she is an addict who hallucinates her injuries. But I ask you, ladies and gentlemen, did she hallucinate these photographs? Did she forge the handwriting of the man sitting right there? No. Gavin stood up. He knocked his chair over. The sound cracked like a gunshot in the silent room. "That is private property. You have no right. That is mine." "Mr. Thorne, sit down." Judge Valencia banged her gavel. Her face was stern. "I said sit down." Gavin did not sit down. He looked at the jury. He looked at the press. He saw the disgust in their eyes. He saw the way they were looking at him not as a genius, but as a monster. He looked at Elena. She was sitting at the prosecution table. She was not looking down. She was looking right at him. Her eyes were clear. Her chin was lifted. She looked like a queen watching an execution. "You did this!" Gavin screamed. His voice broke. The polished accent was gone. The charm was gone. All that was left was the beast. "You ungrateful bitch! I gave you everything. I made you who you are." He stepped out from behind the defense table. "Mr. Sterling tried to grab his arm, but Gavin shoved him away with a violence that shocked the room. "I created you!" Gavin roared. He lunged toward Elena. "I can destroy you. I can break you into 1,000,000 pieces." He moved fast. He covered the distance between the tables in 2 seconds. His hands were reaching for her throat. His face was twisted into a mask of pure hatred. Elena did not flinch. She did not scream. She watched him come. But he never reached her. 2 bailiffs tackled him. They hit him hard from the side. They took him down to the floor right in front of the judge's bench. Gavin fought. He kicked and screamed. He shouted obscenities that echoed off the mahogany walls. "Get off me! I am Gavin Thorne. I own this city." The bailiffs forced his arms behind his back. The click of handcuffs was audible over his shouting. Judge Valencia stood up. She looked down at the man writhing on the floor of her courtroom. "Take the defendant into custody immediately," she ordered. The jury watched it all. They saw the violence. They saw the lack of control. They saw the truth that Elena had lived with for 10 years. The doubt was gone. The verdict was written in that single moment of explosion. It took the jury less than an hour to deliberate. When they returned, Gavin was back in his chair. He was handcuffed to the table. His hair was messy. His tie was crooked. He looked small. "We, the jury, find the defendant Gavin Thorne guilty on all counts." The foreman read the verdict. "Guilty of aggravated assault, guilty of false imprisonment, guilty of terroristic threats." Judge Valencia looked at Gavin. "Mr. Thorne, in light of the overwhelming evidence and your display of violence in this very courtroom, I am sentencing you to the maximum penalty allowed by law. You are sentenced to 20 years in state prison without the possibility of early parole." She paused. "Furthermore, I understand there are federal agents waiting at the rear of the court regarding the contents of your hard drive. You will be transferred to their custody upon completion of your processing." Gavin looked back. 2 men in dark suits were standing by the exit. They were FBI. He had lost. He had lost the house. He had lost the money. He had lost the reputation he had spent 40 years building. The bailiffs pulled him up. As they led him away, he tried to look at Elena one last time. He tried to summon a glare. He tried to find one last word to hurt her, but Elena was not looking at him. She was looking at Chloe. She was looking at her sister Mia. She was looking at Sarah. She was smiling. It was not a smile of happiness. It was a smile of relief. It was the smile of a soldier who puts down their rifle because the war is finally over. Gavin Thorne was dragged out of the double doors. The heavy wood slammed shut behind him. The architect was gone. Elena stood up. She picked up her purse. She walked out of the courtroom. The cameras flashed. The reporters shouted questions. "Mrs. Thorne, how do you feel? What will you do now?" Elena stopped at the top of the courthouse steps. The sun was shining. The air smelled of exhaust and blooming magnolias. She took a deep breath. "My name is not Mrs. Thorne," she said to the microphones. "My name is Elena, and I am going to build something new." 6 months had passed since the heavy wooden doors of the courthouse slammed shut on Gavin Thorne. The seasons had changed. The oppressive humidity of the Atlanta summer had given way to the crisp, golden light of October. The city looked different. The streets looked different. But the biggest change was in the woman who stood in the center of a derelict warehouse on the west side of town. Elena held a sledgehammer in her gloved hands. It weighed 10 pounds. It was heavy and brutal and real. She looked at the drywall in front of her. It was a partition that cut the large room into small, dark, suffocating boxes. It was the kind of wall designed to separate people. It was the kind of wall Gavin would have built. Elena took a deep breath. She swung the hammer. The metal head struck the plaster with a thunderous crash. Dust exploded into the air like white smoke. The wall groaned and crumbled. A beam of sunlight from the high clerestory windows cut through the dust and hit the floor. It felt better than therapy. Elena wiped the sweat from her forehead. She looked around the space. It was a mess of rubble and exposed brick and old piping. To anyone else, it looked like a disaster. But to Elena, it looked like a blank canvas. She had used the money to buy it. The civil lawsuit had been swift and merciless. Gavin's assets had been frozen and liquidated to pay for his crimes. The house on the hill was sold. The luxury cars were auctioned off. And a significant portion of his fortune had been awarded to Elena for pain and suffering. She did not save it. She did not spend it on vacations. She took every single dollar of his dirty money, and she bought this building. It was not going to be a shelter. She hated that word. Shelter implied hiding. Shelter implied that the storm was still raging outside, and you had to cower until it passed. This was going to be a sanctuary. She called it the Blueprint. It would be a center for women who were ready to stop hiding. It would not have fluorescent lights and linoleum floors. It would have skylights. It would have an indoor garden with ferns and jasmine. It would have an art studio and a legal clinic and a kitchen that smelled of rosemary and bread. Elena walked over to the corner where a young woman was sanding a piece of reclaimed oak. The girl was wearing safety goggles and her hair was tied back in a messy knot. Her arms were covered in sawdust that coated her scars like a second skin. "Hey, boss!" Chloe shouted over the noise of the sander. She turned off the machine. She ran her hand over the wood. It was smooth as silk. "I think this is ready for the varnish." Elena smiled. It was a smile that reached her eyes. "It is perfect, Chloe. You have a natural hand for this." Chloe shrugged, but her cheeks turned pink with pride. She was no longer the angry teenager in the black t-shirt. She was an apprentice. She was enrolled in a trade school for carpentry funded by the scholarship program Elena had started. "We are going to build the big communal table next week," Chloe said. "I want to use the walnut wood we salvaged from the old library. It is strong. It survives everything, just like us," Elena said. Chloe laughed. It was a clear, bright sound that echoed in the high ceiling of the warehouse. Elena looked at the blueprints taped to the wall. She saw the lines she had drawn. She saw the future she was constructing. For 10 years she had built houses that were cages for other people. Now she was building a fortress of light. That evening the sun set over the city, painting the sky in shades of violet and burnt orange. Elena walked into her new apartment. It was on the top floor of a renovated building in downtown. It was small. It was nothing like the mansion, but it was hers. The walls were painted a shocking, vibrant canary yellow. Gavin had hated yellow. He called it garish. He called it cheap. He only liked beige and gray and white. Elena loved it. It felt like living inside a lemon. It felt like living inside the sun. The apartment was full of noise and heat. The smell of spicy gumbo filled the air. Mia was in the kitchen chopping parsley. She was laughing at something Sarah was saying. Sarah was sitting at the counter pouring wine. She looked relaxed. The weight of her job seemed to lift when she entered this yellow room. Doctor. Claire Bennett was on the sofa looking at a sketchbook. She looked up as Elena walked in. "You are late," Claire teased. "We were about to start the toast without you." "I was breaking a wall," Elena said as she took off her coat. "I lost track of time." Chloe walked in from the balcony. She was holding a soda. She is always breaking walls. It is her new obsession. They gathered around the small circular dining table. It was set with mismatched plates and colorful napkins. There was no crystal. There was no silver. There was just food and friendship. Mia poured the wine. The liquid was dark and rich. "I want to make a toast." Mia raised her glass. Her eyes filled with tears, but they were happy tears. "To my sister, who went into the dark and came back with a torch." Sarah raised her glass. "To courage, the kind that does not roar, but whispers." Claire smiled. "To the truth, because it is the only thing that heals." Chloe raised her soda can. "To the bad guys, because they underestimated us." Elena laughed. She looked at the faces around her. This was her family, not the one she was born into or the one she married into, but the one she chose. They were the pillars that held her up when the roof caved in. She raised her glass. "To living," Elena said softly. "Not surviving, not enduring. Living." They clinked glasses. The sound was a gentle chime. They ate, they talked, they laughed until their sides hurt. They did not talk about Gavin. He was a ghost. He was a number in a prison system. He did not have a seat at this table. Late that night, after the guests had gone, Elena stood in her bathroom. The silence in the apartment was not heavy. It was peaceful. It was a companionable silence. She washed her face. She looked at her reflection in the mirror. She was 32 years old. She had fine lines around her eyes from squinting at blueprints. She had calluses on her hands from the sledgehammer. She lowered the neckline of her silk pajama top. There on her collarbone was the scar. It was small and circular. It was pink against her skin. It would never go away. It was a permanent mark of the night he had pressed the burning cigar into her flesh because she had interrupted him. For a long time she had covered it with makeup. She had worn high necklines. She had been ashamed of it as if it were a stain on her character. Elena reached for her jewelry box. She pulled out a necklace. It was a delicate gold chain. In the center was a small pendant. It was a golden circle, a ring of fire. She fastened it around her neck. The pendant fell right over the scar. It did not hide it. It framed it. It turned the wound into a centerpiece. It turned the ugly memory into a piece of art. She looked at herself. She did not see a victim. She did not see a survivor. She saw a woman who knew how to rebuild. She smiled. It was a smile that started in her soul and traveled all the way to the mirror. She turned off the light. The room went dark. But Elena was not afraid of the dark anymore. She knew that the sun would rise in the morning, and she knew that when it did, she would be ready to build something new. She was the architect, and this was her life. The moral of the story. True revenge isn't about inflicting pain. It's about reclaiming your power. Elena's journey teaches us that the strongest prisons are often the ones built with gold and lies. But the key to freedom always lies within our own courage. Scars are not signs of damage. They are proof of survival. When a woman refuses to be defined by her trauma, she doesn't just save herself, she becomes a lighthouse for others lost in the dark. Your past may be a chapter of pain, but the pen is in your hand. Write a story of victory.